Now here's the all-new transmission. This is definitely very new. We've never had anything like this in an ARRMA before. Hello folks, welcome to Netcruzer RC. Today I've got something new to show you from ARRMA RC. They've been teasing it for about a month. They finally just released it. We have a new 5th scale RC vehicle from ARRMA, their biggest ever RC. They're calling it the Kraton 8S BLX. Now, while this looks very similar to a Kraton 6S, it is very much different, very much new, but continues on with the same type of style and design that we've seen from other ARRMA vehicles. Everything's just much bigger. So here's the inside of it, and at first glance it looks like a very similar layout to what we're used to seeing on the 6S vehicles, where it's got a double A-arm front end suspension. It does use a pillow ball suspension, which I'm personally not too keen on a vehicle this big, but we'll get into that in a minute. We have a very similar layout that we've seen before, and in some of the other pictures you'll get a better shot of what the inside of the chassis looks like. Here's a shot from the rear. You have these mud guards as well as a very big center brace, and look at the chassis bracing, how well it's triangularized here. They're using the geometry of the bracing to help strengthen the chassis because this is still a 6000 series aluminum chassis. They have to do that to keep the costs reasonable, and then they've started adding all of this aluminum bracing in on top of it. So we have cross bracing, top bracing, this is a brace, as well as the chassis is slotted and keyed. It does have an all-new metal drivetrain. The diffs, outdrives, everything's much bigger than in the 6S vehicles. All of this design looks very similar to the 6S vehicles, but all of these are unique in different parts. They are much bigger, beefier parts because this is a 5th scale vehicle. Similar sliding motor mount design as to the other ARRMAs, but they've got this power module, which this whole unit is removable, and I'll show you more about that. We have 24mm big shocks, and the shock design is different than some of the other ARRMAs, where this bottom cartridge slots into the bottom. Top is unfortunately using plastic shock caps, but it is protected by the shock towers. The center bracing is a body protection tower, and then we've got the chassis bracing, which is the triple brace design, as I mentioned, for geometry to stop the chassis from flexing and bending. And from this shot you can see how the shock towers cover up over top of the shock cap, so that's why they likely felt like they didn't need to go metal shock caps, is because the shock towers do protect them front and rear, as well as even the body mounting position is covering up over top of the shock towers in the front. So the chassis is etched and scored, and this is the similar design to what they did on the 10th anniversary Outcast, but now they've added their ARRMA design to it, and as well as you can see the grooves that they've got in the chassis here. So this little bump here in the center is where your center diff power module keys into, and then we've got some additional skids front and rear. The tires are much bigger. These are Copperhead 2s, a similar design, but they are a much bigger tire, and I do not know the size of the hex, but we'll see if we can get that. The top of the body does have big skid plates on the roof, as well as this body clip design retainer, which seems like it adds pressure, protects the body. The electronics are all new. This is the first ARRMA vehicle that is getting away from the ARRMA BLX ESC, and it's now using the Spectrum Smart Firma ESC. This is their 160 amp ESC, 8S capable, sits on top of this receiver module, as well as you've got your servo, receiver, and ESC all in this one module. It's a very nice, clean design, easy to work on. Unfortunately, we do have an antenna whip sticking up here, which is somewhat interesting because I thought this receiver doesn't have an antenna. Looks like we have a very big servo saver on here. I'm not sure the rating of the servo, but it does look like it's the Spectrum-based servo, so it looks like we're getting away from the ARRMA electronics now. Spectrum Smart electronic technology included, so you can pair this with a higher-end radio or add upgrades to your radio to get the smart data. It does have a 1250 4685 brushless motor with a motor fan and a big heatsink, so that's awesome. Again, this is the new Spectrum branded motor. So here's the size difference here. This is the 5th scale Kraton versus the 8th scale 6S Kraton. So it is certainly taller, longer by quite a big margin actually. This new Kraton is bigger than an X-Max for length and width. It's just a lot lower because this is a Truggy instead of a monster truck. Note here the maximum speed of 55 miles an hour, asterisk, which is 89 kilometers an hour in optimal driving conditions on an 8S LiPo with optional pinion gear, which is not included. So the out-of-box speed is going to be significantly less than the 6S Kraton. It's interesting to me that they're box rated speed is not achievable with in-box parts. That's a rarity for ARRMA. Usually they always give you the speed pinion included. In this case, it is not. Now this ARRMA does have AVC, active vehicle control, so it does use the DX2E active transmitter, and it does have active vehicle control, so it will do some gyro-based steering compensation and throttle compensation for you. There's another shot of the chassis where it's got the grooves, which will add rigidity. I do like that they've done that instead of it just being one big plate, and very nicely designed and sculpted. It is a very pretty looking chassis, and hopefully with all the bracing that they've added in the top of it, it will keep it shaped well. Here's the wheels and tires. Interesting that the inside of the wheel has a hex insert. So I still am not sure of the size of this hex, but that is really cool. In order to stop stripping out your wheels, it has a hex insert built right into the plastic. So that's awesome. Here's a closer up shot of the body post shields with integrated body pin retainers. So this is so that if when you do scrape it along the roof, it's not going to wear down the pin. It's just going to wear on this, I believe. We have some side guard protector on the chassis, which is typical for ARRMA RCs, as well as you can see here that we do have adjustable turnbuckle links on the front, and it is a double A-arm suspension. The geometry of all this stuff is very similar to what you get on other 6S ARRMAs. Now here's the all-new transmission. This is definitely very new. We've never had anything like this in an ARRMA before, where you've got your pinion and your center spur is now going through a transmission with a lay shaft to the center diff. And this center diff is all very beefy. It's got metal ring gear, metal spider gears, metal pins, metal posts, metal shims, metal body. They have a YouTube video how to service it. It comes with 1 million CST oil inside. Very new gear reduction transmission. Looks very strong. Here's a size comparison of the shocks of the 6S shock versus the 8S shock, and here you can see that the 6S has a metal shock cap and a little protector, and the 8S is unfortunately using a plastic shock cap. Also no shaft boots. The 6S always has a little shaft boot to keep the dirt out. This one does not. And the bottom of the 6S has a typical cartridge design, which is what this boot clips onto. On the 8S it can't do that because the bottom cartridge is flat and it's all inside the shock body. So this is the cartridge unit I was talking about, how it plugs in through the bottom, which is a little different design than I've ever seen before, which means that there's really nothing to connect here to for boots to protect the bottom of your shock shaft. I do like this, that the front and rear bumpers have integrated skid plates. We first saw this on the Mojave that they started doing this. Very nice that that is included and gives you just that extra little bit of protection that you would want for hardcore bashing. Here's the axles and the drivetrain. So high strength steel front rear center drive shafts with spiraled gears. And here's a shot of the dual battery trays on either side of the chassis with integrated clip retainers for wiring. Here's the electronics you get in the unit. You get a DX2E active with the 6100 receiver with AVC. This is a smart ready unit. Cannot get smart data off of this radio until you add in the Bluetooth module. And here's showing that you can add the Bluetooth module upgrades, which then allows you to add a phone mount, a Bluetooth module, and then you'll be able to get the Spectrum dashboard to get your speed and stuff. I've mentioned on my other videos that I don't necessarily recommend doing this. For the price of adding the Bluetooth module and the phone mount and some of the upgrades to this radio, you could just go out and buy the DX5C Smart. And that includes all of the stuff included with a screen in the radio itself, so you don't have to use your phone. Here's the servo you get. You get a 5th scale Spectrum servo, the S905. Wow, look at the size of it compared to the 6S servo. Looks like it comes with all brass gears or metal gears. Hopefully it's fast enough. It puts out 38 kilograms per centimeter at 6 volts. Speed 0 to 0 seconds, 60 degree. That's pretty slow, 0 to 0. But it is very strong, so hopefully it holds up. And here we've got the new Spectrum 160 amp Esc. It supports 3S, 4S, 6S, and 8S. They're only recommending running this vehicle on 8S, so you would need 2 4S batteries that tie into these IC5 connectors to power this unit. 3S and 4S and 6S are not recommended for the Kraton 8S model. The BEC that is included is 6 volts, but it does go up. You can include it to run an over voltage of your BEC. That is in the manual. Here's another shot of the motor. The 1250 4685 size 8S brushed motor, 4-pole construction, 6.5mm gold connections, a 5mm shaft, and something new here that I've never seen before is this little groove, which is a spot for an E-clip for retaining your pinion. Just in case the pinion slips off, it won't fly off the end, it'll be held on by the E-clip. That seems unnecessary, but interesting feature. There's another shot of the whole module removed. Here's inside of the receiver unit. Okay, so the Spectrum 6100 does have an antenna coming off of it. They show it here, coming out, and then up the top. The front and rear diffs are spiral cut with access within 7 screws. Here's the size of the arms. These arms are new, they are unique, they are not Mojave arms, they are much longer arms. Everything is bigger and longer in this car. Here's a shot of the whole 8S power module with the motor and the transmission assembly. There's just a shot showing that you do have the cable retainers in the battery tray just to hold the balance plug out of the way. Well, speaking of this, one nice thing, Spectrum Smart Batteries. You buy a Spectrum Smart Battery, it has all of these balance connections in this IC5 connector, but then it also gives you legacy balance connections. So you don't have to always run them in smart mode. If you just buy this battery and you have an older traditional style LiPo charger, you can still charge it. You can still do everything normally through this balance port. I love that. Traxxas, their Traxxas ID connectors do not give you a legacy balance port. Here's some of the size and dimensions of it. It does come in 2 colors. You can get it in green and black or orange and black. All of the stats on it. Here's the sizing and the weight. It weighs 24 pounds. 24 pounds, 4 ounces. That's a heavy, big RC. Then we get into the resources of the manuals and the exploded parts diagram. So here's the manual. We can just quickly scan through the manual here and see if there's anything unique in here. So you do get a different type of cross wrench than we've ever had before, because this is most likely a 24mm sized hex, something big. Here's some of the recommendations for batteries. So here's some of the ESC specifications. It does run at 8S LiPo. Its BEC output is between 6 to 8.4 volts, 5 amp constant, 8 amp max. So you can run a BEC of up to 8.4 volts to overvolt that steering servo. Likely not recommended, but if you want to get more speed out of that servo, you can run it in 8.4 volt mode. And here's the default setups for the ESC of what we have for forward, reverse, the punch, the brake strength, motor timing. Here's some of the maintenance information about how to service the transmissions, check the pivot balls, check your differentials, check your front and rear differentials, check your drive shafts. This is where I don't really like this type of a suspension geometry for this type of a big heavy car, as things can break, things do get loosened off, but anyway, it's something you just got to keep an eye on and tighten it up over time. And here's how to service the differential. So you do have to unclip the bracing, pull out the transmission assembly, pull out the screws, pull the tranny apart, and then you can service your differential. With 1 million CST oil is what they recommend in the center diff, and in the front and the rear they're recommending 500,000 CST diff weight oil. And here's how to adjust that pinion gear. Now they are showing that there's a clip on the end of this, and then that's the end of the manual. So let's get into the exploded parts diagram, because a couple things I just wanted to show here is that these parts are definitely new. So here's a bottom A-arm, a 330589, top 330561. The pivot ball or pillow ball blocks are 330558. None of these part numbers match up with anything else. Even the pivot balls themselves, 330560. These are all new parts. Much new, much bigger, much stronger for a vehicle of this size. If you look up something like the Mojave, which just came out, none of these part numbers match up. These are significantly smaller parts. Then we've got ARRMA's YouTube channel, which for the first time on release day of a vehicle, they put out a bunch of maintenance videos. I haven't seen this before. These are fairly long, in-depth videos about how to service everything new in this, how to remove the center module and service the center diff, how to get at the electronics and the servo, how to tune the ESC, how to get at the shocks and tune them, and then battery and cable management. So check that out, and in addition to some of the running videos that they have, pretty cool. Then we got to talk about pricing. So it's $900 USD for this, and doesn't seem to be available yet. Let me refresh this page, Tower Hobbies. Maybe it'll be available today. I don't know availability of it. That's one thing I didn't see. They released all the information today, but I don't know when it's expected in stock. So you can pre-order it now, and you can get it in green or orange, but I do not know when it's going to be available or in stock. Alright guys, that was a pretty long video. It is a pretty cool RC. I do not think I will be getting one for myself, but I am looking forward to seeing other people run them and have some fun with them and get out there with a big new ARRMA RC. If you enjoyed this video, hit that like button. If you're new around here, subscribe. If you want to talk to me, leave a comment down below. And as always, thanks for watching.